listeners, welcome back to another episode of the All In Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, David Morse, CEO and team leader at Keller Williams Arizona Realty, with my co-host, still in Maine, just world traveler these days, Joe Quattrucci, the director of growth for the Kristen Cole Real Estate Network. How's it going, Joe?
Great, David. Thanks for having us today.
Dude, I'm so glad that you're looking bright. Your energy is up, and I'm super excited that we have with us someone who I've admired from a distance. I think that's how I'll put it. Rob Chevez. Rob, welcome to the show, man.
Hey guys, I'm super pumped to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, dude, we're going to just have a fun show, and I'm excited to learn and bring our audience value.
Rob, we like to always kind of start by giving our listeners kind of a high-level overview. So if you could, you're obviously involved in a lot of different businesses. Give our listeners just kind of a high-level overview of the different things you're involved in and what we're going to be talking about here today.
Sure. So I have the privilege of leading the Caza Group. It's a team in Reston, based out of Reston, Virginia. We'll do about 120 million this year. We'll end the year around 120 million in volume. We actually have 5 small, little pod teams throughout the DMV area. So Reston being kind of like the main team, and then we have one in Gainesville, we have one in Clifton, we have one in what we call Global, we have one in Leesburg, and we've decided that we're expanding, but we're expanding really in the region, not outside of this area. That's really what we've done. And we have a construction arm to our business. So we have a renovate now, pay later program that's been really good for us when it comes to attracting business out there and getting new listings. And that really kind of came out of the fact that I started as really as an investor with my wife 20 years ago, buying, selling, renovating houses. And so, our world has evolved, and so we've got what I call an integrated real estate business, where we've got construction, agency, we run a large investment group called Grid. We have a property management division that we just recently started. I sold a large our property management company 10 years ago, and we've just started another one. At some point we have a title relationship. At some point we want to do mortgage and insurance, but that's down the road. Right now, we're just trying to get good at one thing, right? Gary's whole get good at one thing.
One thing at a time. I love what you just said there, that you really created an integrated, business. And that's what I think is so beautiful about real estate, is all these tangential arms that you can go into that allow you to create that integrated business. So I want you to take me back to, because you started as an investor, and that's really neat, because Joe and I kind of did that as well. I mean, when Joe and I share our story, the only reason we went into real estate was to create wealth through real estate, and having a license was just a tool to do that. And so we're constantly teaching agents how to do that, leverage your license and things like that. Yeah. For you, what made you get into see that as the next logical step? Well, even before that, take us back. Why did you get into real estate investing?
It's interesting. When I was 24, 25, my best friend, he planted a seed in my mind. He said, "Hey, I think I'm going to start a recruiting business, a headhunting business, right?" And I've been working for who I consider just a dear friend and mentor in college and a year out of college in the world of insurance. But I never saw myself in that world. I didn't see myself as an insurance guy. I honestly, I was so young, I didn't see the power of insurance. I now understand the power of insurance, right? But at the time, I didn't see that. And my friend, this was during, 98, 99, we were about to enter into this .com boom, right? Somebody approached him and said, "Listen, if you find me a salesperson, I'll pay you $5,000 for that person," right? Now, $5,000 20 years ago to a 25-year-old kid. That's just a ton of money, right? And what they were looking for was somebody like us, somebody who, I wrestled D1 in college, right? So they were looking for athletes. They were looking for people that were fraternities, sorority. They'd had leadership skills, and they were placing them in technology companies and then training them and developing them into future leaders, right? So we're like, oh, we know these people. That's us, and we have lots of friends like that. So literally, he's like, I think I'm going to start this business. I'm like, if you start this business, I'll help you launch it. And he showed me that we could make some money, made a couple placements. And I said, okay, I'll go into this world of recruiting. Had no idea what it was all about. And for the next 7 years, I grinded with him in that business. I mean, we went through the dot-com boom. We made a ton of money, right? Then we went through the dot-com bust, 9/11 dot-com bust. We grew to like 13, 14 recruiters and then whittled down to 3 partners, right, after the bust. And then by 2005, I had been living and dreaming and breathing real estate. That's the only way that I could put it, right? In 99, when I was making money as a recruiter in 2000, 2001, I was taking all the additional dollars that I had and I was buying rental properties. I had picked up the book, very much like you guys probably, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? And I read the book and I was like, okay, yeah, recruiting, the problem with being a headhunter is that every month you start at zero, right? So every month we had to start at zero. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. I wanted to start a consulting practice in that recruiting business, but he didn't want to. He was like, I don't want to take the risk. I don't want to do that. I like what we're doing. It's simple and we make good money. And I was like, okay, well, I want to build some kind of reoccurring revenue. And if we're not going to do it in this business, then I've got to do it outside the business, and I'm going to do it through properties. And so that's what got me thinking about investing in the first place, right? I started going to other investment groups in the area and learning and meeting people and taking in information and reading and buying Carlton Sheet stuff and, like old school stuff, right? When it comes to investing. And honestly, by 2005, my passion was all about real estate. And I was making really good money in this recruiting business. And I walked in one day and I just told my wife, I think I want to just go all in on real estate. But essentially we'd be leaving, I'd be leaving a couple $100,000 a year salary. And my wife wasn't working. We had a new baby girl. And now I'm going to go into real estate. And I really didn't have a plan. I mean, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a system. I didn't have anything. My gut told me that I needed to do this. And remember, this is 2005, right? So this is starting at the top of the market. And I knew what irrational exuberance felt like because I'd gone through it in the tech bubble. So I told my wife, listen, we're going to go through some kind of downturn in real estate. I know it because it feels like the dot-com boom. And so when we come out of whatever this mess is, I think we'll be well positioned, but it might be a bumpy ride along the way. But I've always been able to figure things out. I can always out hustle my problems, right? And so anyhow, without a plan, without anything, I just kind of went into my partner and said, hey, buy me out of this recruiting business so that I could pursue what I love, which is real estate investing. Right?
Rob, I want to stop you real quick. Did you use the term irrational exuberance?
Yes.
I wrote that down right away. Can you just kind of unpack that a little bit? What does that mean to you, and how did that apply to your situation?
So in 2000 and let's go back in 1999, right? In 2000, you had everybody talking about the stock market, right? Like the waiters talking about the money that they're investing and all the money that they're making, and it was very similar in 2005. Everybody was an investor. Everybody was flipping house. Everybody, right? So you've got this when everybody's getting in it, should be a time where we're all a little nervous, right? And so it felt that same way in 2005. And I call it irrational exuberance. I mean, I've heard other people talk, I think Warren Buffett called it irrational exuberance, right? I remember when, in 2008, when he said, when everybody's fearful, be greedy. And when everybody's greedy, be fearful, right? And so, so that's what, that's what it felt like.
Reminds me of what Gary Keller talks about in the book Shift, of this idea of law of equilibrium, he calls it. And basically what the law of equilibrium says is that the more potential earning there is in a particular market, the more licensed real estate agents there's going to be. And as the number of potential commission decreases because the market shifts, the number of licensees is a lagging indicator. So the number of licensees will decrease slowly behind the number of available inventory to list. So same concept. I thought that was an interesting term you used. I just wanted to unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you did ask the question, Joe, and Rob, that you dove into that a little bit, because if that's already a lesson that someone needs to take away from this, is that when everyone else is getting in, like, you need to at least be cautious, because I think especially, you see so many people, I see so many agents or investors, make just tons of money and then just over leverage themselves to a point where when that comes, like, they're not positioned well to come out of it on the other side. And, I think about the investors who made it through those years, as those are the ones that you really want to look at. And I love that you went to your partner, your spouse, and you were like, something's on the horizon. Like, just trust me, we're going to get through this and to the other side. That was just a lot of foresight. So you're investing. I mean, you're investing. Your partner buys you out of this recruiting company. So did you go immediately and get your license and get into brokerage, or were you just investing? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Just investing. I wanted to go and buy apartment buildings, right? My whole thing was, remember, I wanted recurring revenue in my life. I've been grinding as a recruiter for 7 years. Like, every month they're starting at zero. And I was like, okay, I want some kind of recurring revenue in my life. So, I read countless books and talked to lots of investors, and they're like, you need to get into small multifamily or larger multifamily. So I had already, my wife, by this time, we'd probably purchased 6 or 7 single townhouses in our area. And now what I was going to do was move into small multifamily, like duplexes, triplexes, quads, right? Maybe some larger units, but and I was going to buy 20 of these and pay them off as quickly as possible, and then just kind of create that $10,000 and kind of reoccurring revenue, right, to come in as like a base, right? And that was the plan. And soon you get into it and you realize, okay, no, wait a second. It's going to take a lot more than what I thought. And 2, I really need more 30, 60, 90-day cash flow coming in, right? Because as you buy these assets, they suck up a lot of your cash to get them fixed up, to get them leased up, and then you buy another one. And I wasn't borrowing money from it. I was self-funding a lot of these deals. And then I realized that I was going to have to dispose of some of the assets. So the model became, okay, for every 4 that I buy, I'm going to sell 3, I'm going to renovate, and I'm going to sell 3 to other investors, turnkey. And then we'll manage those assets for those investors, turnkey. And that just happened by default, because the investors, I'd sell them the asset and they would say, hey, this is great, but we don't know anybody in this area. We trust you. Will you guys manage it? Now, the issue was that we were buying these assets 2 hours away from where we lived, right? So we live in Northern Virginia, and these assets are in like Western Maryland. So it's 2 hours away from where we lived. And my wife was like, yeah, we can do it. I was like, okay, I guess we can do it, right? So within a year and a half, we had 300 assets under management, 2 hours away from where we lived. We were literally buying 20, 25 properties a year, and we were getting a lot of investors that heard that we were managing other people's properties. So they just started, there was a need in that market. There was a big need in that market. And I just cut my teeth learning everything about, like, at that point, raising capital, negotiating with sellers at the kitchen table, creative financing, owner financing. There's like, I was just hustling to provide for my family. And remember, I left a really good income in that recruiting business. And now I was trying to figure it out on this investment side, and work hard. and we figured it out. I got my license though as a tool, just as an additional tool to get referral fees on. And I wasn't ever thinking to really build a real estate agency practice until I read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
So before we dive into that, Rob, I just want our listeners to pick up on what exactly you did and really the genius behind your plan. David and I constantly talk about wearing different hats and providing our clients and our customers with different options and different opportunities. And what I hear you saying is you took your investing business and you're building your own personal portfolio. And when it made the right strategic sense for you to sell a property, you're not only selling it on the market, but you're selling it to another investor you're in a relationship with, and then you're managing the property for that investor.
Yeah.
Talk about a way to feed and to build your own secondary business through your primary business. So I just want our listeners to be thinking about how can you use your real estate license in your day-to-day activities as a way to feed additional revenue streams for yourself.
Yeah. My whole model is built off of that, by the way.
So what then happened for you to transition and say, I want to get my sales license, not just for referrals, but now I want to start building a team of sales? How did that transition happen?
Well, I found myself at Barnes & Noble when those were still around. And I saw this
Were you
book.
going to buy a closed down Barnes & Noble? Is
That's
that why
right.
you're there?
And I picked the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and I just started flipping through it. And I realized, wait a second, this isn't a book about real estate. This is a business book. I don't know who this Gary Keller guy is, but it's like he's reaching into my mind a little bit and kind of breaking everything down into modules of how this should be done. And you could take the word agent out and put in the word recruiter or any small business, right? It literally is a manual for building a small business. And it got me really thinking. I was like, listen, I don't really have a model in what I'm doing. I've got a lot of hustle. We've formulated a basic model, but it's not a business that I'm in love with because it's 2 hours away from where I live, right? Now think this is 2000. Now this is 2007. Okay, so this business is 2 hours away from where I live. I've got a baby girl that my wife and I are like hauling back and forth to these decrepit houses, and I mean, you guys know this. In the world of investing, you see everything, right? So we were seeing everything, and I had a friend of mine who was a builder in the Northern Virginia area, and he was selling luxury property. And he just happened to mention that he was having problems, right? 2007, the market was sliding a bit. He was having problems selling an asset that he had. And that he'd used this luxury agent that was really well known in the area, this team, and they just weren't getting it done. And I had just gotten my license after I'd read the book purely to get referral fees. That was it, right? I was going to use the referral fees to help pay for my marketing engine, right? That was my thinking. And I said, well, I think I know what the problem is with the asset. Give me 30 days to get this thing sold. I'm confident I can get it sold, right? He said, okay. He gave me the chance. And I got it sold in 22 days. It was like 1.6 million, right? I, put a good chunk of money in my pocket. And I said, wait a second, let me think about this. This was in my backyard with somebody that I was friends with an asset class that I enjoyed selling, right? And I was like, I think I should do a little bit more of this, right? And there was no risk, right? Because on the investment side, I was doing a lot of fixing and flipping. So you're managing crews, multiple crews, you're borrowing a lot of money, you're carrying a lot of debt. I always felt like I was robbing Peter to pay Paul to get some of these projects done. And I turned to my wife and I said, I think instead of buying 25, 30 houses a year, fixing them up and selling them, and by the way, I always felt guilty selling one of the assets because I felt like I was cutting the head off the golden goose. Because remember, I wanted to buy these assets to keep, but now I was selling good assets that I would have kept under normal circumstances. But I needed to sell it because I needed the money to fuel our life, right? And so I was like, I just didn't like that feeling. I'm a collector of assets, not a seller of assets. And so I was like, well, what if we just sell other people's properties on the retail market, because we see real estate from a 360 perspective, right? I don't have this narrow view then that what I felt at the time most agents might have, right? Like sell pretty houses. I could look at a house and understand strategically what I need to do to get that property sold, whether it's fix up or the right positioning or the right marketing. And so so when I sold that property for my friend, I realized, you know what? I think I'm going to do more of this. I will continue buying real estate investments for our own portfolio, but we should consider building a real estate team where we're helping the community kind of do what, sell real estate the Caza way is really what, the way I thought about it. And this was in 2008, I started returning back to the Northern Virginia area. In 2008, you guys remember, everything was a foreclosure or a short sale. And those words that Warren Buffett had said stuck in my head: when everybody's fearful, be greedy. When everybody's greedy, be fearful. And I'm like, everybody is super fearful right now. We should probably think about buying. And I remember Gary Keller putting a chart up at family reunion. Remember, I was brand new to KW. I was a baby KW person. Might have been my first family reunion. And Gary's like, listen, this is the historic mean. This is the mean, this 4.5% appreciation, this line, right? We were well above the line, in the year 2005. And then now we're way below the line. And I remember thinking at some point it's got to go back to the line. And I should think about buying these assets now. And the numbers just made sense in our market again. They didn't make sense. So I just started buying. And by the way, nobody was giving a recently self-employed real estate guy any money in 2008, right? So I had to think about how to develop partnerships with people, wealthy people, so that we could buy the assets together. And that became a model for me to help, my team and other agents understand how they can create wealth as real estate agents, right? Without having to put any of their own money into the projects.
Rob, do you mind going into that a little bit? Because I love this. I love the conversation around leverage. And I hear so many agents say, I don't invest in real estate because I don't have the capital. Can you talk a little bit and share some of the strategies you've used to leverage other people's money in order to get yourself into a deal?
Sure. I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit about where we sit in the value chain of the transaction, right? What happens is everybody gives too much credit to the money piece of it, right? When in reality, we all know that the real value is in getting and identifying the asset. And if you identify the asset, you actually command the market. If you control the inventory, you control the market. So as an agent, I could control an asset, whether it's a listing or whether I have it under contract, and I could go to you, David, or to you, Joe, and I could make you an offer, right? And I could say, hey, David, I got this property. It's a great asset. It's a great long-term buy. If you put up the funds, right? I've got the asset. You put up the funds. I'll help manage the renovation, and I'll manage the asset for us. You don't have to do anything. You just have to put up the money, right? And some people will agree to that, and some people won't. And you find the ones that agree to it, right? And there's lots of people that will agree to it because they just don't have the bandwidth to go find the asset. You're essentially handing them money. Now, you have to have built a reputation. People need to feel comfortable with who you are. They need to know what that you know what you're talking about. But I developed a relationship with a wealthy guy that knew me, trusted me. And he said, great, you find these properties, I'll fund them, right? And essentially what we did was we did the Burr method. We just didn't call it the Burr. Nobody called it the Burr method. Then it was like, that's what we did, right?
None of us were smart enough to trademark that phrase.
I know, he was so brilliant.
So Rob, let me ask you a question. Is it fair to say then, when you finally did get your real estate license and you were going on these kind of like organic listing appointments, were you going into those conversations with the back of your mind knowing that you very well make an offer to purchase the property yourself, or were you going in there just as a listing agent, or just describe that dichotomy a little bit?
Yeah, no, I went in there purely thinking, how could I help them solve their problem, right? And maybe one of the options was I could buy the asset, but that was rare. more often than not, I knew that I could help them do a couple of things to help them improve the value of that asset where they could make more money.
Right. So you're guiding them as their counselor to say, do these few modifications, do a couple of improvements so we can really take full advantage of the market and get the maximum dollar for your property. And you know what to tell them to do because you've done your own investments, you have your own flip properties, and you're aware enough with property structure. This is going to get you a good ROI. This is not.
That's right. I knew what things cost. I knew what needed to happen. I knew how to make it happen. And what happens is when you've, been wholesaling for some time, ultimately what happened to me was I started realizing, I'm creating arbitrage here. And part of the arbitrage that I'm creating is that the other people don't know all the facts. Like, let's be honest about that, right? They may not know all the facts about what the asset is worth or what could be done to just like fix it up a little bit where they can make more money, right? So I started like having very transparent conversations with people. I call it like transparent wholesaling, right? Now it's just being like a really effective problem solver with listings. But I would just say, listen, yes, I could buy the asset, right? But that's not potentially your best option, right? That won't put the most money in your pocket. Now, it is an option. So let's talk about that option. Then option number 2 is let's polish the penny, right? Let's just do a little things. Let's declutter. Let's clean, right? If you could hold on for 30 days, I can probably leverage the market to get you more money. Or we can do a larger renovation if you got a little bit more time. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have the money, I can lend you the money, right? I can lend the money. I could charge an additional commission, right, for lending that money. So we started coming up with a way to have like these very transparent conversations with sellers over time to help them just win. I mean, that was my goal. I just want to help them win.
Well, and I love that you still left it on the table as, the first option is still a valid option, because I think you were just talking about like, don't underestimate the value of possessing the asset, right? And I want to go back there in a second too, but also the value of convenience. Like, oh yeah, the market always dictates value. And what we've learned over the past several years is that convenience holds an amazingly high value. And so sometimes people don't want the massive, the maximum amount of money, right? They're valuing something else more than that, maximum return. So I love that you still left it as an option on the table to think through those things. And since we brought up our friends over at Bigger Pockets, they talk about a deal delta, right? That there's knowledge, there's hustle, and there's money. You need all 3 parts of that delta to actually make a deal come together and be a winning situation. If you can provide any side of that triangle as an agent, as an investor, whatever, you hold keys to making a deal happen, to creating value for whoever your end consumer is. And I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, well, but here's the unique position that agents have that they don't realize is that we have an additional tool in the toolbox that many investors don't have, right? So if you could understand the other side of the equation, if you could understand how an investor thinks, right? I call us, agent investors. So we have the heart of an agent and the mind of an investor. And if you understand that, your license is a tool, right, to help facilitate a favorable outcome for the seller. Sometimes it just might mean that I might buy the asset, right? But I also have this other tool that can create leverage for that seller, and I can help them win. And so, often I might get investors come to me and say, hey, should I get my license? Because I hear that there's some kind of conflict, right? And I'm like, there's no conflict. I'm like, if you're going to cheat people, then there's a conflict. Right. You should be cheating people anyways, right?
Right.
Like,
if you intend to break the law, maybe not.
Yeah. I was like, so anyhow, I finally realized, and it's why I almost hesitate. Like, I call us real estate entrepreneurs, right? Because I'm just a real estate entrepreneur, and I have different tools in my toolbox to help people get whatever it is that they're trying to solve, right?
And at the end of the day, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I just want to say, Rob, I love that a few minutes ago when I asked you the question, are you going into listing appointments with the mindset of buying the property? I love your response to that question, which is, I'm going on a listing appointment to figure out how I can help this individual. And that might mean purchasing the property, but more often that means listing the property and giving them guidance as a consultant. And you're just demonstrating so clearly for our listeners today how we as real estate agents have a tool at our disposal, and how if we just make that simple shift in our mindset, not only does that open up opportunities for us as individuals, but it allows us to help and service more of our clients without putting the pressure on ourselves of, I have to earn a commission. I have to get the listing.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've been able to build out now all these ancillary businesses around how can I help more people achieve what they want, and how can I provide that resource to them? And that's exactly what you've done clearly in a variety of different businesses. Super impressed.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
So talk to me. Go for it. Go for it, Joe. This whole like one of us in the studio, one of us out of the studio, it's a little harder to figure out our dynamic.
I'll let you ask the next question, David. I want to see where you bring this conversation. I've got a whole list of questions, so I won't run out.
Well, I kind of want to bring it to into grit a little bit, because I think it's fascinating how you've used building a community also to your advantage to help people solve problems and to make sure that you've inserted yourself into various conversations happening in all of these areas. Talk to us a little bit about where the inspiration for this networking group around investing came from, and what that's allowed you to do in providing more value and opportunity for you and your people in your organization.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I just kind of go back to having a conversation or listening to Gary, right? Gary saying, you need to build a database. And I started thinking about, how do I make it happen faster? How do I build my database faster? And certainly I could go out and do kind of one-to-one type of conversations. But what if I could create a one-to-many type of relationship, right? What if I could help people understand how they could create wealth in their life? This is a journey that I've been on for the last 20 years. I've been thinking about it, love reading about it, obsess about it. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of things right. I think I have a lot of context and content to be able to provide, at least facilitate a discussion around it. And at the same time, build a database and come from a place where I just want to serve, right? Just want to kind of like help answer questions. Because I know when I used to go to RIAs, right, these real estate investment associations, that it just felt like a pitch fest. I literally felt like they would give me enough information to make me dangerous. And then I couldn't connect all the dots. And once I immersed myself into the business full time, I sat back and asked myself the question, if I was a brand new investor and I needed to understand how to do this and how to do it quickly and understand the full life cycle of real estate investing, what would I need to know first? Okay, what would I need to know second? What would I need to know third? What would I need to know fourth? And I literally just kind of wrote out a curriculum. And I did it super fast because remember, I was in it. Like I was living it every day. So it was like really easy. I'd be like, oh, I need to understand the concept of wholesaling, because everything from there just kind of grows out, right? Which means you need to understand what an asset's worth, and you need to understand what it costs to fix up that asset. And you need to understand the ARV. So literally then we just started piecing together a curriculum to help people understand what that looked like. And then I would just facilitate a conversation, right? And I said, okay, January is going to be about wholesaling. And then February is going to be about how to negotiate the deal, right? And then we just kind of built it from there so that at the end of the year, we're talking about how to be the bank. Like, how are you going to be the bank? How are you going to now be the lender? And then we're going to start all over again, right? And what I found was that by just coming from a place of contribution and helping people understand this, not claiming that I was a guru or anything like that, just giving them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and sharing wins and failures and helping facilitate that discussion and creating community, that I got rewarded with listings. People started joining my team. I built my downline. Like the group grew from 5 people to 10 to 20. Before I knew it, there was 100 people in the room. to then I started having people asking me, can I host these meetings in other locations? I was like, listen, I'm just one guy doing deals on my, like over here. And then one day after the third time of being asked, I finally just asked myself, why don't I just license this the way we do it? And I did. And so Grid essentially right now it's led by leaders that run individual organizations, some within KW, some outside of KW, right? We've got 15,000 members. And really what we are is we're a collective community of people that love real estate investing, love building businesses, creating wealth, creating legacy, and we just talk shop, right? And there's a big number of agents in there because I think that there's a void, there's a need. Agents are trying to figure out how can they serve their clients at a higher level by getting this knowledge. And then two, how can they do it for themselves, right? There's so many agents that kind of like how I felt like when I was a recruiter, remember, saying, well, shoot, I wake up every month I'm starting at zero. So there's so many agents that have been doing that for so long that now that, there's a hunger to be like, okay, how do I build additional assets and income streams to build a bigger life for myself? And in the process, teach my clients how to do it and maybe even do it with my clients, right? Because that's what's so cool about what we do is that we can live this integrated life and do it with people that we care about. So,
and hearing you talk about that is what, really gets me so fired up about how you've gone about building that part of your world, because again, it is just coming from contribution. I think what some people don't realize is that the more deposits you put in over time into a community, it's going to take time, and yet you will get those you will get to withdraw from that as well. Like you said, your team has been built, you're downline, you've gotten listings. Those things come, but I bet they didn't come right at the beginning. And so I know agents who use networking groups or try and create something and they don't see a return, just like any other lead generation method. They don't see a return in the first 3 months and they give up. And my encouragement to, if that's you out there, is to keep going, because we've all seen the illustration of the person, mining, and they're just 2 feet away from the gold or the diamond, right? Before they give up. Like, keep at it, keep delivering value, keep making deposits, and you will see the return in that. And it's so cool to see what you've created there.
It really is. And then it really is special. Anybody can create something like this, right? I mean, when you think about it, the superpower is being consistent. I've run my group, my individual chapter, the first Tuesday of every month for the last 13 years and have never missed, ever, right? Never missed. And so it's like this power of being consistent and power of I call it social currency. Like, I'm creating social currency. And at some point I'm just getting withdrawals that come in. And before you know, you're like, man, like I got a lot of things that are coming in because I planted lots of seeds right along the way.
And just to piggyback off that point of like community that you and David are both talking about, we say in real estate all the time, your net worth is directly connected to the size of your database. And that's totally true in real estate investing as well. Having a bigger network is going to provide you with more property opportunities, more investment opportunities, more cash, more resources to make your transactions become a success. All of these different, building an investment company is not something you do alone. You must have local resources and you must tap into local assets, which are other people, to build out your ability to invest. So Rob, let me ask you this. Now that we're in 2021, what is your investment strategy looking ahead? What opportunities do you think that are most prevalent right now? And what asset classes are you most excited about this year?
I'm cautious because I feel like the market's been good for a long time. So I'm cautious. I just got done buying a COVID house, meaning I was one of those people that decided to go buy a little river house out in the country, right, and make it into an Airbnb. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see if I can make something out of that model, but that's more of a pet project than anything else. Still love multifamily, right, in the right markets. Industrial's interesting, right? because of everything that's happening with drop shipping and Amazon, and like industrial is an interesting play right now for investors. But at this point, I'm at a stage where I'm very selective about what I buy, and I'm paying off a lot of what I already own, right? I'm really trying to strengthen that base.
Sure.
So, we have maybe almost 10 assets that are almost paid off. They'll be paid off here soon. There's another 7 assets that I have another 5 or 6 years on them, right? And I remember I had a discussion with Linda and Jimmy McKissick it might have been like 7 or 8 years ago. And literally, like they gave me the blueprint, right? I mean, they gave me the blueprint. They were like, get really good at your business, be focused on listings, right? Break into Gary's top 100, and when you start building businesses, when you start building a big business, more opportunity is going to come your way. And continue, Linda was like, every day I wake up and I think about how can I add $1 of passive income into my business. And that stuck with me. So I was like, okay, how do I add $1 of passive income into my business? So Joe, to answer your question more directly, literally the conversation I was having with myself an hour before we jumped on here was 2021 is going to be completely about how am I creating reoccurring revenue, right? And increasing all reoccurring revenue in every business that I have, right? So how do you create that in the agent business? How do you, property management's a little bit easier because it is a kind of a reoccurring revenue kind of business, right? But I don't want to touch anything anymore unless I do something one time and I get paid on it for a long time, right?
And just to clarify for our listeners, that's a right that you've earned over the last several years of building a portfolio with some stability. So if you're listening right now, you don't necessarily have to approach investing the same exact way as Rob, but right now the phase of life you're in allows you to focus on that particular need versus others.
Right. Yep, that's right.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Joe. I mean, because that's a conversation I was just having with an agent this morning. Was like you earn your way into additional opportunities. That's what you said. Jimmy and Linda McKissick said to you. And for people that don't know Jimmy and Linda, we'll have to get them on the podcast sometime. I mean, just massive passive income warriors in their own right. But like you earn the right to do that. Like start mastering something. Like if we go all the way back to the beginning of your story, Rob, like you were recruiting and you were making an active income because you developed a skill in which you could go out and be the best recruiter, right? In that world. Or even before that, in insurance. Like you were earning an active income which allowed you to leverage. If you think you're going to come into this business and just skip over those steps, you're sorely mistaken. Are there some people who fall into wealth? Sure. But like if you're banking on like being that celebrity on the Facebook, ads that we all see, like you're probably not going to hit it. This takes work. This takes time on task. You even mentioned that like there's so much, like there's a lot of this that's just mundane, right? And like it's repetitive. It's consistent. 13 years it took you to get to a place where grid has been like a licensable thing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen overnight. And I think that conversation's more relevant than ever. And I know some listeners probably feel like they hear that all the time, but it's important. Like you got to wake up, put your tool belt on and go to work in whatever industry you're at if you want to earn the right to additional opportunities. Okay, I'm off the hobby horse. Sorry.
No, it's yeah, man, it's so true. And by the way, if you're having fun, what happens is you wake up and you're like, damn, it's been like a decade? Like, that's crazy, right?
Correct.
That's crazy.
Rob, I want to go back to the very beginning of the conversation, and you can dive as much into this answer as you like, but you mentioned that you're expanding your sales team only in the local area, and you mentioned a few, I think 5 locations in the local area. Can you touch on why your expansion model for your sales business is so hyper-local and you're not expanding further geographically?
Yeah, I mean, we made a move to Florida, right, we did the whole Florida thing and realized, wow, there was a lot of complexity. And even Gary had talked about that. There was a lot of complexity in it, like different licensing laws, different ways that business was being done, that it was really disruptive to our operations arm, right? Because our operations arm literally services all the different offices. And so we said, well, let's keep it simple, right? We're in the tri-state area, so there's actually 3 states, but they're all within our MLS. And so it's Virginia, Maryland, and DC. And we live in an incredibly dense area. I mean, incredibly dense area. Like all the business we would want could happen just right in our backyard. And when we really started evaluating how to take territory and how to be able to train somebody to take territory, I believe that you've got to get really narrow in your focus, right? I call it zoning a market. You go and you identify a zone, a hyperlocal geographic area could be a zone, right? You might have heard me talking about this when I was on stage with Gary, right? You go and you pick a zone, or it could be psychographic, right? Which is like investors in a general area. And then you just go deep and you dominate that area. So if I'm training an expansion partner to dominate an area, I better have the right playbook to show them, hey, these are the 5 ways you activate your farm, what we call farm 2 actually. Farm 1's database. There's a strategy for how to zone your farm 1, right? Your database and going deep. Most agents don't go deep on their database. But once you've earned the right to do farm 2, right? Then what we do is we give you the playbook for that. And there's 5 ways of activating that farm 2. And you just go deep so that you become omnipresent in that market, and literally nobody can displace you. Technology can't displace you. People can't displace you, because literally you have all of your energy focused on this one thing, right? And we found that we could give somebody a playbook here at the regional level. Well, I mean, this is a concept we could teach anybody anywhere, right? But for our operations team to be able to service at a super high level, we felt like we could give people the playbook to do it, and then the support on the operations side to crush it, right? That would be, and so there's 3 things we believe they need, right? They need some kind of operations support, coaching and consulting support, and appointment support in our model. And so we provide those 3, and we can do it really well at the regional level. And by the way,
it makes total sense. This is a great answer.
And Joe, at some point, somebody within our organization might say they want to launch it outside of the DMV area. And if they're the right leader, we'd be open to doing that. But they would have had to have grown through our business, right? And not be an outsider trying to come in to do it.
Right.
Because
right.
yeah, there's just so much learning, almost like what Mo Anderson did, right? When she said, okay, I'm going to go open in Oklahoma, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say, Rob. It's very similar to the approach that Gary and Mo took with franchising Keller Williams. And I think a lot of people who want to get into the expansion conversation maybe don't necessarily think about the fact that you're really franchising within a franchise, right? And the cheeseburger has to be made the same way every single step along the way. And it makes complete sense that the operational support and playbook to deliver that cheeseburger 15 minutes down the road is much different, has much different demands than delivering it 15 hours away, right? And so I love that you're saturating. And when you're doing that, like when there's that close of, there's not that many degrees of separation in your model, you're really just expanding the influence presence rather than creating a bunch of small pods, if you will, of influence that really can be put out. You're creating, I guess the analogy I'd use is like a fire. Like the fire is spreading into this big wildfire now, as opposed to lighting a match over here and over here and over here that might stay, flickering for a while, but has a greater chance of being blown out by a breeze, right? And I think so. There's a lot of wisdom in that approach to how you're doing that.
Yeah, and running expansion is a leadership skill, right? And not everybody's going to want to do that, right? It's a whole nother, a whole nother level of complexity and leadership skill that's there, right? And we've certainly failed our way through that. And we've done a lot right. And I, it's a model that I enjoy right now. I think part of it is this, I like building business partners. So I own a lot of real estate assets with business partners. And my 5 offices, the offices that I have right now, they're all my business partners, like in a law firm, right? So they earned their right to own an entity with me, as opposed to them being. Now, in our model, there's like this progression. Like you could go run an office, but you've got to earn the right to be an owner of that office at some point, right? And so we're now much more clear of what that looks like. And I'm much more cautious. When I went to Florida, we didn't know what the heck we were doing. We were just testing, Yeah, we learned a lot.
Yeah.
I just leave it that way.
This could become its own separate episode. I think when we put this out in the wild, I know we're gonna get listeners that want you back. So maybe we'll be able to do that. Maybe we'll do an event or something. If we ever get back into in-person national conferences, we'll have to bring you into one of our live events. But I want to transition the show into the last segment. The same 3 questions we ask every guest. 3, 2, 1, action. You're in the hot seat, my friend.
Okay.
You ready for this?
I'm nervous.
Joe, question number 1.
All right, Rob. Question number 1 is, who has been the one most influential person on your business and why?
Gary Keller.
Okay, unpack that a little bit for us.
Well, it's interesting. What I've always appreciated about Gary is that it's just like this person that just constantly pouring knowledge of, I heard him say this one time. He's like, it's not that I'm smarter, is that I'm 30 years down the road, right, from where you are. And so what you're doing is you're getting all this experience and all this wisdom. And when you think about what Gary's built, it's no different than everything that we're building right. It's everything that we're already building, right? It's what he already built it, and it's huge, right? And so I don't think that there's been a person that's had more influence on my thinking than him, right? And also he gave me permission not to be a workaholic, which was a big thing, right? When my first mentor, who I absolutely love, he sold this company for $200 million, so successful guy. But the imprint that I had on me was to be successful. I was up at 4:30. I was at his house I was at his house at 4:30, working out with him till 5:30, at the gym at the office by 6:30, and we'd leave at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And that's what this guy did for like 30 years, right? And he was wildly successful, okay? I remember being at family reunion and Gary saying, listen, that's a sickness, right? That's a sickness. And it's cheating, right? His words were, you're cheating, right? And you're cheating your family. You've got to figure out how to do more in less time. And he was like, I was always at home with my family, by dinner time. And I'm like, okay, here's a billionaire telling you how to do that. And the other guy, he did well too, but I realized that there was a better way to do it. And so Gary's kind of poured in a lot of different, wisdom into me over the years. And not just Gary, just everybody in leadership within KW. So.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that about Gary. He hasn't joined us yet on the show, but I'm gonna get him one day. We're gonna get him, Joe. All right, Rob. Question number 2. What's been the most influential book on your business? And on this one, I have a feeling I might know an answer that you might go down. So it can be presently or in the past.
Most influential book. Well, I reference kind of the original thinking of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right, in Cash Flow Quadrant. I think that concept really spoke to me early in my life, in my early 20s. It's like, oh, the cash flow quadrant, like, I get this, right? I think I'm very big in the community building right now. There's a book that I just got done reading, and it's called Gather, and it's about building community. And what I realize is that everything that I've really done in my life has been about building community, whether it's building a team. I built community around that team, or servicing our local community. It's like we're building community as we do that. Grid, right? Grid is one big community. And so everything I've done is been around building community. And John Maxwell also wrote a book called Everyone Communicates. What is it? Everyone communicates, not everybody connects.
Connect.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was another one. So I've been on this path here recently of reading more about connecting with people. It's not about selling, it's about connecting and creating community. And by the way, what we just do by default is sell real estate, or we invest, or we are a headhunter, but really what you're doing is you're building community, creating value, helping people grow. And so that's some of my thinking right now.
I
love that answer.
I haven't read this one. This was just given to me. Can't hurt me.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
David Goggins, super inspirational.
Goggins.
Yeah. That's one that I keep on my nightstand as well.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, third and final question for you today here. As you know, this is the All In Podcast where we encourage our listeners to go out and take immediate action. So what advice do you have for our listeners leaving this podcast episode here today? What can they go do right now to start moving the needle forward in their business?
In their agent business?
Well, we talked about a lot of different things today, so I'm going to leave that open to your interpretation. We talked about sales, investing, leadership, so I'm going to leave that open-ended for you.
The number one thing I'd recommend for anybody is really you've got to control the inventory, right? So get good at having conversations with sellers. That would be it. And understand that, there's really 4 ways to really dive into that. There's a needs analysis of the person, the needs analysis of the house, an education of what it's like in the current market, and whether or not you've got the solutions in order to help them solve whatever problems they have, right? And so get really good at understanding that conversation and controlling inventory. If you control inventory, you control the market. And that goes for you if you're an investor, if you're an agent, right? You've got to control the inventory, and you got to figure out a way to control it. And especially now in an inventory short market. So that would be now tactically. Now, if you're going to say tactically how to do that, right? It's about going small instead of going wide. So, I heard Gary say this, and it makes so much sense. Become the very best agent on your street, then become the very best agent in your neighborhood, right? Then become the very best, agent in the zip code. Then, and just kind of like in concentric circles, go like that. And by the way, that is how we built Zone, right? I was like, okay, let me dominate my neighborhood of 92 houses. Now let me dominate the neighborhood that we call Lake Ann around those 92 houses. Now let me dominate the zip code, right? Or let me go after the investor community in this area, right? Or absentee owners in this area. So it's about going narrow and going deep. That would be my biggest advice, because agents, not agents, like business owners in general, we are all over the place, right? The shiny object syndrome. So like cats trying to catch mice, So go deep.
Yeah.
Go deep. Good stuff. Super good stuff. Rob, thank you so much for spending time with us, investing your valuable time into us, our audience. Where can our listeners find more of your content?
Sure. I mean, they could, follow me just at Rob Chevez, like on Instagram. It'd be probably the easiest, or on Facebook. You'd find me, Rob Chevez. Easy enough.
All right.
Or they can go to Grid Investor, right? At Grid Investor.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we'll link that up in the show notes. This has been, I've loved this episode. So helpful. I don't know about you, Joe, but like feel like we're on similar wavelengths with you, Rob, just in how we're aligned and in helping people and serving our communities. And so I appreciate everything you brought today, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
My pleasure, guys. Been awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rob.
Guys, thanks for listening to another episode of the All In podcast. As always, go play All In.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play All In.